Hi everybody, welcome to today's Transformation Talk. I'm here today with Karen Caterson of Square Peg People. She is a writer and an encourager of square pegs who are having trouble fitting into round holes. So one of the things I love, thank you so much for being here. Let me say that. I'm really happy to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
One of the things I love most on your website is when you talk about supporting mindful nonconformists in celebrating what's right with them instead of trying to fix what's wrong. And I love the way you say that. So I wanted to get that out there because I think that's really essential to who you are and what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel that very, very strongly. The culture seems to point out, what's wrong with you, how can you fix it? And yeah, I really like focusing on what's right with us. It works. I think of it with like gardening. Like when you feed the flowers, it's not the same as when you attack the weeds,
Right.
It's like, yeah, just that's important to me.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about yourself as a recovering psychotherapist.
I do. Right.
Can you tell me what that means to you? Like what is the path that took you from being a therapist to doing what you do now?
Okay, well, I don't talk about it so much anymore, although it's still, I think, part of my Twitter handle. But at one time, that was a very painful thing for me, so it was like part of my identity more, more in the forefront, because I loved it. I loved the work of connecting with people. I loved the work of helping people, again, see what's right with them instead of what's wrong with them. And the medicalization of the field, that was just so depressing. And the way that it wasn't about anymore, helping people connect to themselves, helping people find their truth, that kind of thing. It became literally, you have so many visits for this person who's maybe suicidal. You've got five, hello? And it just, I fought the system a lot, and it just, I wound up saying, this is not working, I can't do this. The system, you could just see the whole thing changing so much. So, so I left for that reason, but like I said, considered myself recovering because my heart was kind of broken about being out of that. But I think because that community seemed, or at least where I was and who I worked with, I'm not saying everybody who's a counselor or a psychotherapist works this way, but where I was and the fact that I didn't want to go private, I tried that. I had an office, I went private, I spent all my time writing. I never recruited clients. It just wasn't for me. So like looking at that and how I was doing, it was just not healthy for me, and it was too much of a fight to try to help clients. So that's why I got out of that. And I had thought when I got out I was writing a book on bibliotherapy, but like girlfriend style, pointing to a lot of self-help books that were just wonderful and that pointed to positives and all that kind of stuff. But even still, because that was self-help, that's also how I started Square Peg People. It was a self-help site. And that's all changed because I started to even see how I was connected to self-help stuff, even though I was on the edge of wanting to look at the positive. Still, self-help, that whole term is like, something's wrong, you need to fix it. So Square Peg People has evolved as I've evolved with that kind of thing, and I don't so much connect to that term, although it still cracks me up to think of that. So, Did I answer your question?
Yes, good. Thank you. And I know, it's interesting because when Benjamin was stillborn, all of these people that I knew through blogging came out of the woodwork, and you were one of them. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience quite a while ago now?
23 years almost now, and 2 weeks.
Wow. So you were pregnant with twins at the time?
I was pregnant with twins, which was a big surprise when I had an ultrasound done because I was bleeding, and they quickly did an ultrasound to see what was wrong, and the nurse said, "Oh, I see 2 hearts." And I did not even think of twins. I thought, oh my God, something's wrong with my baby. Twins was nowhere in my thought process. So yeah, we went, like, it was about 6 weeks before they were due, and one morning I was just in horrendous pain, but I had a really high pain tolerance back then. I wasn't so connected to my body, so I had like a crazy high pain tolerance, and I kept thinking, oh, I'll be fine. And then it turned out that my uterus was rupturing while I was telling myself I'd be fine.
Oh.
And so actually I was raced to the hospital, and it was lucky, they say, that any of the three of us survived, but Harry, my living son, he was fine, and he was right there when they opened up. I had cesareans before, and when they opened up, the uterus was already open, and he's like, so they took him out, and Christopher was underneath, and Christopher had been deprived of oxygen. And so he was actually dead when he was, when they did the cesarean, and then they revived him.
Oh, wow.
And so they revived him, and then basically he was brain dead he didn't even have basic brain stuff happen, and he was on, I can't think of the term now, the oxygen thing, making him breathe, the chest compression, the whole thing. I lost the word just now. And they kept thinking, there's amazing things that are happening that we're finding with the brain. We're just starting to get into some of that stuff back then, 23 years ago. They're like, there's possibility, blah, 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 that things could turn around. But he couldn't feel pain, even stuck with a needle, and he couldn't swallow at all. So, but he lived for 3 months.
Oh, my gosh.
And, and he was at St. Christopher's Hospital in Philadelphia, and we would go see him every day and, spend a lot of time there. I had 2 teenage daughters at the time, and, they were teenage daughters. They were teenagers at the time. And then little Harry, who was just born and doing absolutely fine. So, we would go be with Christopher. And he was even actually supposed to be coming home with 24-hour nursing and emergency stuff but they had gotten to where he had all kinds of operations for stomach feeding tube, like we, had to do the pouring the formula in, and he had a trach, and I had learned how to change that. And so for if you'd move him around, you would still have to pump the air in, and but they had gotten to where he could have some time off the breathing apparatus, so it looked like he could go home. And then they had the breathing stuff off of him, and he started to die, and they asked, what do you want to do? And to put it back on again, that wasn't right. It would be cruel. Even though we were like, the next day he was supposed to come home, but so we made the decision not to put the, fake life thing back on him. And yeah, that was crazy hard, and it connected me even more deeply with, I had always been drawn to people who were dying, and later I went to work with people who were dying. I didn't know the words then, but it was like a midwifery thing. Right there in that hospital for 3 months, in the intensive part where so many babies were dying, so many people were in with that, and there's something about that just draws me. It's not like I want that to happen. Being in that experience was like touching some throbbing core of life, and it was. My father says this about his mother's dying and death, that he wouldn't give a nickel to repeat the experience, but he wouldn't take $1 million to not have had it. And the Christopher, the whole experience there with Christopher was that for me.
Wow. Wow, it just sounds so intense.
It was intense, yeah.
Oh my.
I don't even know how, but somehow with the new baby at home, Harry, and with my daughters who were still in school at the time, we unschooled after that, but at the time they were still in school and all the things going on. It just there was moments of crazy intensity, and there was moments of a lot of moments of being really rock solid, grounded in life. I don't know how to explain that, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I in one of the interviews I've done with my friend Jay Westbrook, he's an end of life specialist, and he talked about the fact that whenever people are coming into or out of the world, it's really the closest, one of the ways we get closest to the presence of God, to the presence of the divine, you know, and how there's something really special in that moment, as heartbreaking as it can be.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you were experiencing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you already a therapist at the time?
No. Mm-mm. That was the fuel to get that kind of moving along. I'd always been a listener, a kind of deep listener, and that kind of fueled that, because I did want to get into working with the dying. I actually imagined myself working with AIDS patients or with people on death row, because I used to work in the prison system, and I really I like that whole thing. And only, if you're going to go for a degree, you might want to check what your state's requirements are, because a counselor in Pennsylvania at the time was not state approved for those kind of things. So that didn't work out, except it worked out beautifully. I was trained under a guy who was Oxford trained himself, and who just was brilliant with the way that he taught. So again, it worked out wonderfully, but it's kind of silly how, I had this idea in my head. And as it turned out, I worked in a nursing home was around people who were dying, and I was called in a lot of different times to the rooms or to talk to the family. So it did, that part of it worked out cool. But it's funny how you plan things and they don't go the way you thought, or you don't quite plan them out all the way, and they take a course of their own.
Yeah. Yeah. We think we're in control.
Right. Got this one.
Oh, how funny. Wow. So I'm curious, tell me a little bit about working in the prison system.
Oh, that was when I was in college. I worked in the juvenile detention center, and then different times I would be called when there wasn't much work happening there and they needed somebody over in the main prison, which is now the James Michener Art Museum. They've changed it, and they have this incredible plaque outside about freedom. It's a poem, and I can't think of the author's name, the poet's name, but it just talks about using a space like that had been ugly, old, meant for that kind of thing. And then now it's a beautiful, beautiful art museum that has just incredible works. So anyway, that was kind of appalling, that place, actually, and hearing the doors shut behind you and stuff. But I loved working in juvenile detention. That was just, I loved it. So again, I think then I was connected to square pegs, people that are really aware of their uniqueness and living in it. It's not the thing of being lawbreakers.
Right. But it seems like a lot of people who are in trouble with the law are there because they just don't conform to society, and they haven't had the, I always think of it as like when we're raising children, we provide these barriers, almost like a gutter in a bowling ball, and they kind of bounce back and forth to stay safe, but they get to explore who they are in between.
Right.
And it's like they're missing that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's that whole square peg thing is like when I was a therapist and I worked with people in trauma and grief, I thought, oh, so that's it. It's people who've been, in trauma and grief who really just see life and just feel it more full. I didn't add in the fact that it was people who had been through those things and then came to therapy. So already they were people who were open to experiencing. So it wasn't just people who'd been through trauma and grief. And it also, as I learned down the road, it isn't just people who've had trauma or grief. Although after a certain age, you've probably had at least some of that. Mm-hmm. But I'm just so drawn to the square peg, the people who, I think everybody's a square peg. I think I talked to you about that before. It's like the thing creative. Everybody is creative. It's just the way it is. But not everybody resonates with that term. Mm-hmm. You can probably look at them and see it in their life, but they can't necessarily. Well, square peg is the same thing. Everyone is unique. Everyone does not fit the mold. They are the mold for themselves, like a snowflake. But not everyone resonates with that. So I love the spirit of people who are like, yeah, I'm different. And, maybe sometimes it's because they felt it because of some ugly things or something going on for them, or the way they were treated, things like that. And that's a sad thing. But anything that gets you into, really shining in your uniqueness, really being you, it's such a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's to me, that's sort of the essence of that transformation is it isn't always pleasant what we go through in life, and yet if we are conscious, or if we can become conscious around it, it really, and even people who just follow their instincts, I mean, the human spirit is naturally resilient and leads us to those places of transformation and growth.
For real.
Yeah. Yep. So tell me a little bit about what's happening on your site right now. You've got some new, what did you call them? Square peg life support e-guides. I love the term.
Well, we just added my daughter, who I call on the site, I call her slightly British daughter, because she has this British sense of humor and reserve that I just wasn't born with. And so slightly British daughter, whose real name is Lauren, and I we picked out, like, looking back through over 500 different posts, we picked out ones that really nail two different things. One was the thing of community and how that starts inside, how solidness inside yourself, being your own best friend. I don't use those terms, being your own best friend, actually anywhere, but I just thought of that. And the other one is about just relishing your uniqueness, really noticing your uniqueness and the stuff we were just talking about now. So we looked back and we found 9 posts that really nailed each of those things, which happen to be the things that mostly get commented on or that people email me about. And then we took them and I recorded each of those, and I wrote a new one for each of the sets. And then we put those together so that they're beautiful. My daughter's a photographer, so she put photographs with them and she arranged the PDF. So it's just beautiful with these 10 posts and these beautiful photos and some extra quotes she put in. And then I recorded each of them, which is whatever frightening. I don't know. My voice can go with you. So that's our newest thing there. So yeah, and that's kind of foundational there, kind of nails what Square Peg is about.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, okay, well, I love it. And people can find you at squarepegpeople.com.
Yeah.
And, okay, well, let me ask you my 3 final questions. So the first one is, if you could wave a magic wand and change anything about the world, what would it be?
I thought about that because I've been listening to your interviews, except I didn't see the one of the guy you mentioned. I want to catch that one.
It's wonderful.
The life specialist. And I saw that question and I thought, my first thought initially when I saw, heard that you asked that question was, grace. I would just make everybody experience grace or make grace out there, whatever. Grace is that, it's kind of like that thing that one of the Chief Justices couldn't describe pornography, but he said, I know it when I see it. Grace is like that thing to me. It's like, I can't exactly describe it, but I know it when I see it. It's kind of the thing of when you see yourself as your deepest self, or when people extend that to you of your deepest worthiness and love that every one of us has, no matter what you're doing on the outside, no matter what's going on for you or how outside of character you could be acting. So I would do my, magic wand and make everybody have grace just, and I thought of that and then I thought, but that is already, it exists. It's there. It's a matter of opening our eyes. And I thought if I had my magic wand, I wouldn't make people, that wouldn't be right. It would seem like it just it's there. And yeah, I hope people's eyes open to it. And that's part of what my work is. I hope to open people's eyes to grace. So I don't know. I'm going to have to use my magic wand decoratively because I can't think of anything else to use it for. But I love that question. That really got me thinking.
Yeah, and I love your answer because that it's true. It is there, and we just need to see it, but we all need to see it in our own time so we can recognize it.
True.
Yeah. What brings you the most joy?
That's funny. It's like I'm a being person, capital B, capital E. I'm I think I came out of the womb just, I'm reflecting. And, it's just my thing. And lately, doing, which is nice balance, it's good to have doing in there. So lately I've been gardening and knitting, just more doing, and particularly those two things. Gardening, I'm just really enjoying. We let our gardens go for a while. A lot of stuff was going on, and we just kind of didn't pay attention to them. So getting out there and like, oh, you're under there, come out, let me see, kind of messing around and actually digging, and I don't know, having fun with that. And like I said, knitting, which is just something at the moment I'm enjoying the heck out of.
What are you knitting right now?
Right this minute, a chemo cap.
Oh, are you contributing to the, I saw that on your blog.
Oh, yeah, chemo caps for Jen.
Chemo caps for Jen. Oh, yes, people check this out. It's amazing.
Yeah, chemo caps for Jen on Facebook. If you like the page, the woman, Jen, she actually died in last March, and her sister, her birthday is the 4th of June, and her sister is trying to get 604 likes on the page just in honor. And the things that her sister, I'm not saying her name, and I didn't say it online because she doesn't have her name on the chemo caps for Jen. I've met her, and she seems a humble woman, and I don't want to embarrass her or whatever. But she does so many things. She was talking in my knitting group, and she does so many things for other chemo, people surviving chemo, people who have cancer, people having chemo, for organizations that are coming up with this, that, and the other. She's just such a giver. Excuse me. So I thought it would just be such a blessing for her to get that honor that she's looking for her sister.
Now, unfortunately, this won't air before June 4th, but can people still go afterwards? And
for sure. I'm sure she'd be glad to see that no matter when.
Like the page. And it sounds like if people want to knit caps, can they do that as well?
That's something I'm not sure about. That maybe I'll ask her over on the Facebook page. I don't know if how she would do that. She may give the name of the hospital that she mostly donates to. I'm not sure if she would be comfortable giving her own name for it. I happen to see her, so I can make caps. So. Well,
maybe people could just, if anybody's interested in donating or knitting a chemo cap, they can either contact her through the Facebook page or do their own project.
Yeah, for real. And I'll ask on the Facebook page, so if anybody goes over there, hopefully I'm sure she'll answer me on the page, so they can see it if they go over.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, and last question. Which should be easy, but maybe hard because there are so many answers. What's one fun or interesting fact about you that makes you uniquely you?
I would think something connected to my kids, which is kids, they're grown up. But it was the fact that they were unschooled. One of them from junior high on, one of them from high school on, and one of them from birth. Harry was from birth. And that's just, it's kind of with the focus on education and I don't know. It's just been just a delight for one thing, but also it just kind of, that shines our whole family's uniqueness, the thing of questioning and, how things are run, doing it our own way, and then also really shining. Like that allowed each of my kids to really connect to what they were involved in and get involved in the community and in things that they wouldn't have had the depth to do if they were in school, because there'd be too many days out of school to take part in those things. So that, I think, I would say that's cool.
Neat. I love knowing that about you. That's such a wonderful thing.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Karen, for sharing your story and your time today.
Thank you. It's been lovely talking with you.
Yes, thank you. And if people want to find you, again, it's squarepegpeople.com, and we'll have your bio on the page.
Cool. Thanks so
much.
much.
Thanks.